about tonight's interview. Most of you will remember last year we did a production of Pippin, and that is where I had the wonderful honor of working with Elliott Plunkett, who has become one of my favorite people to work with. He's such a joy. And also, we get to interview with his father, who I am still waiting to work with, who I watch from afar and whose wonderful talent, and just sit there jealous because I haven't shared the stage with him yet. So we get to sit with them and talk all things acting, and who else? Who knows what else will come up. So let's bring on the Plunketts. Hi, and Otto. Thank you for having Otto in the background.
Of course. We go nowhere without our chickens.
Yes, all 13 of them.
For those of you watching, they're not joking.
We actually have chickens.
They have chickens. It's great. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for coming and doing this show. I'm so excited to talk to you. Yay. So I want to talk a little bit about just your lives and how you got into acting and everything. But first, before we get into that, let's talk about Kentwood and how you heard about Kentwood.
How we heard about Kentwood, I actually found a posting for auditions for Our Town. I believe it was November 2018, and that audition was the first I had ever heard of Kentwood. I had no idea it was there.
Did you see that in Backstage, or where did you see that? Actors Access?
I think it was on Backstage, or I think it was Backstage, yeah. I mean, and in Kentwood's defense, that was my third audition, so I was just getting into it and finding theaters.
Oh, wow.
So I was happy to find it because there's not a lot where we are. But there's more than I thought, but at the time there wasn't very many. So finding Kentwood and being pretty close to where we were, it was pretty cool. But yeah, I found it on Backstage. It was Backstage.
Awesome. Hold on one second, because I'm seeing some comments that maybe were frozen. So okay. You can hear us, but we can't see us. Oh, I do see it's frozen. So let me do a little tricky stuff to see. Oh, I think we're back. Yay! I hope everyone can. It looks like we're moving on my end, so thank you for the jazz hands. Wonderful. Okay, so we got all caught up in how you heard about Kentwood, which is great. And then and then Elliott, did you hear about Pippin just through your dad, or did you hear about it through another source? What made you want to audition for it?
I did hear just through my dad, and I heard about Kentwood because he was doing Our Town, and he decided to take us to The Little Mermaid, which we watched, and that was when I was introduced to Kentwood. And then in Our Town, I got even more into it because I just knew everything that went on backstage. And I kind of knew about the community, and I thought, wow, it's pretty awesome.
It is an awesome community. And you both are from Los Angeles, right? Or Southern California area?
Yeah. Born and raised.
I love it. So how did you get into acting?
I got into acting because of him.
Really?
And I got into acting because of my mom signing me up for summer camp. I didn't want to go to it first. And when she came to pick me up that first day, I was just like, I don't want to.
He was mad at her for coming together.
That's so great.
I did not want to leave.
And it was a theater summer camp, or what kind of summer camp was it?
It was a summer camp at like the basement of a church. It was called The Troop. They're closed now.
Aww.
But my teacher's name was Miss Allison, and she's still doing like some online classes every once in a while, and I join them sometimes too.
I love it.
That Troop closed down because she moved to New York.
Oh.
She got to go to, I can't remember the name of the theater school, but she got accepted into a theater school out there, so it was a big deal for her to move.
That is great.
I thought it was because she auditioned for a show and like for fun, and she accidentally got the part.
Well, that might have happened too, but she went to a school for writing.
I see.
That
So
is
that's the
awesome.
short story. The little bit longer story is actually when I was like 10 years old, third or fourth grade. I in my school we did some plays, but I got to be in a production that they did through LAUSD, and I got to do a play called Survival Sweepstakes at the Mark Taper, and I
Oh,
got to
wow.
be on stage with John Ritter and Robert England, and it was like 4 schools, so we had a big school contingent, but only some of us got to have like lines and be like leads and things
Oh,
like that, and I got to
wow.
be a lead. And so that was my introduction into theater. And then, but as time went on, I just kind of there wasn't options for me that I knew of, so I just kind of let it go. High school, I didn't do anything. College, none of it. And just kind of always was interested, but not really pursuing. And then, honestly, when he started doing it, I was just kind of in awe of this kid, and then also being able to, because we, as parents, we help out. So seeing them on stage, but also seeing the production side of it and all those other things, I was just got me kind of interested in it, and I decided kind of one day I was going to start auditioning, and so I did. But absolutely, my inspiration was this guy.
He's pretty inspirational. I'm going to be honest. Elliott,
Agreed.
you're pretty great. You really are. And I was not lying when I said I really enjoy working with you. It was a lot of fun. So I find that so interesting that you got a little bit of a taste, Shawn, in your youth, and then you went all those years without anything. And now I know, like we talk about this a lot, you go at this full force. I mean, you are auditioning all the time. You're researching all the time. You're working on your craft all the time. You started voice lessons. I mean, like you're really going at it.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm trying to make up for lost time. Yeah, I when I was a kid, I think it was, things that you did was little league and stuff like that, and not to knock my parents, but it was more of do good in school, don't get in trouble. And little league was local, so we did little league, but there was no avenues in front of me for acting, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I thought rehearsals were awesome. Learning to dance was awesome because it was a musical, and sing. And we were in LA in a rehearsal studio, and I just thought we were big time. We're in a real theater. But it just kind of, there was no other place to go after that. And it just didn't seem, it's funny because looking back now, I don't know why I let it go, because I always enjoyed it. I always followed actors and liked the idea of theater and movies and television. I was always into it, but I guess it was kind of like one of those things like, how do you go about doing it yourself without really kind of doing the research and like I said, it was like, if you don't start, you never will. So I did, and I take this really seriously. I don't think I'm as talented as the kid, and or a lot of people out there. I think especially now that I've gotten to work with more and more people, and I see how natural some people are and how it just comes to them. So I obsess about it. I think about it. I study it, all aspects. And I think really doing my first musical really like opened my eyes to how much I need to learn. And I love learning. I like learning new things, and I love the challenge of it. And I like the idea, even though it's acting itself is so scary, but the idea of kind of jumping in with both feet and then figuring out how to do it. It's kind of cool. Like I said, with Elliott, you give him his lines, and before you know it, he has them absorbed, and it's incredible. And with me, I find techniques to learn the lines and figure out things, but I just love the idea of making something human, making it real, and going beyond the written word and reciting lines like they did when you were in school. Say it like this, or acting like I always tell you, acting like a lion, but actually bringing your character to life and the challenge of that. And it's interesting because there's two ways to look at it. Did the audience like what I did, or do I feel good about, the performance I gave? And it's all, of course, a little bit of both, but it's such a challenge.
It is.
And it's always so different.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about being an actor is, like they say, you always want to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. And so you find a role that comes naturally to you. Your instinct is like, ooh, I'm going to do more of those. But what's incredible is jumping into the opposite and trying to figure that out and seeing if you can do that successfully.
Yeah.
So, and then on both sides of it, watching my child do it and learn those things and try to help him as a parent, but also try to respect him as an actor has been really interesting. Especially during The Giver, which is the first time we ever worked together. And what an interesting challenge. I mean, start to finish, from the audition to, the final night was, it was great. It was incredible, but it was difficult. It had its challenges.
I definitely want us to get into The Giver, but before we do that, I want to find out from you, Elliott. You started all this, so you brought your dad back to the theater. So what was your first show, and what even interested you in pursuing that in the first place?
Well, my dad interested me in pursuing or going to Kentwood in general, just like doing shows there. And it was the first theater that was outside of school that I had ever done a show at. So that also made me want to continue to do this, because it's like, oh, okay, that moved on pretty quickly.
I think I just learned a bit of new information. Are you telling me that Pippin was your first show outside of school?
Yes, it was actually.
Oh, I did not know that. I am really impressed.
No, because Alice was in school.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So what shows did you do? So really was this summer camp is what inspired you to continue looking at this in school? Because I know now you go to a performing arts school, but I'm assuming you didn't the whole time. That's something new, right?
Yeah. In fact, I actually went to a non-performing arts school, just like a regular school, and then they made me do this one Annie show where they just took 2 kindergartner preschoolers. And they gave us 2 trays, and they just made us dance in the background. And every night I'd just be like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun.
Yeah. There was 2 kindergartners. They usually didn't let the kindergartners in those shows. So they got that. That was actually his first school. He went to kindergarten. It's right down the street from our school, our house. And that's where I went to school.
Aww.
And so his kindergarten teacher, pre-K teacher, was all about Elliott going to the school he goes to now, which is South Shores Elementary in San Pedro, because really, if you ask anybody who has met Elliott his entire life, he's been a performer. He's always been singing since the day he could talk. Literally would wake up in the morning singing, and always was performing, whether he's at a party or at my parents' house singing for somebody. So I think that was a natural fit for him. And that kind of happened at the same time the troupe and South Shores kind of happened all around the same time. And it's been such a good thing for him. I mean, talking about finding the right hole for the peg, he fit in there perfect.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, you can really tell. There's a difference whenever you have somebody that's doing something because oh, we just want you to be cultured and want you to be well-rounded, so learn this instrument. And then somebody who is oh my gosh, I love this. I really want to do it. So right. I think it's great. And I also want to give a shout out to schools, because I think that's really important to have this music and theater, dance, art, visual arts, all kinds of these things, opportunities for young people to see, because a lot of times we wouldn't realize, oh my gosh, you're an actor. That's what you are, So I think that's really great.
This particular school, I just want to say, before we go too far, it is a public school. And, it is a performing arts magnet school, but, people know what's going on in this day and age, especially in California. They don't get extra funding because they're a performing arts magnet school. So a lot of what happens is through donations, and it's through the parents, whether we give money or parents who build the sets and things like that. So it is a fantastic school. They do so much with so little. They actually get less funding than a lot of the other schools in LA. So a lot of what happens, especially production-wise, is just by the parents giving time and money. And what's amazing is what these kids are able to do. If Corona didn't happen and they were in school, the last part of school, they're finishing up their tests and doing all that, and they're working pretty much full time at putting on a complete production at a theater with lights and sound and stage. And these kids, not only do they do it, but they do it well and are capable. And it's just awesome that school exists, and it gives these kids the ability to really learn something that most of us don't get to learn, and really learn some adult things. And we learn as parents, at least I have, that he's so much more capable than a little boy. We think, oh, they're kids, they can only do so much, but they're extremely capable. Yeah. And you give them a little bit of responsibility, and a lot of kids are really going to just run with it. Yeah. Elliott in particular, again, I mean, I'm his father, so I'm going to brag, but I've been amazed at his ability to juggle, and his enthusiasm, his maturity is incredible. And I think since he did his first small production at school, he's been in something. This is probably his first and longest break he's had since he started. Yeah. But between school shows, large productions, and he's auditioning and working at other theaters, he's just been going, and he loves it.
Yeah.
You know what actually makes me kind of want to laugh now is when I did Annie in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. The one of the ladies who was helping said, "Act like a butler, stand there and look cute." So that's kind of what I followed until I watched my dad act, because then you kind of taught me to pursue the emotion of a character.
I thought you thought I was good at being a butler.
No.
Oh, I love it. You guys are such a great team, and I really watch you. And I think, Shawn, you touched on something that is really, really important, and that is the ability of young people. And sometimes we don't give enough credit to young actors and young people for everything and in all instances. And I'm a teacher, and we know that they will rise when you give them an opportunity to, and you give them the room to grow. So I think that's really great. And I've watched both of you learn from each other, which I love.
Absolutely.
So I want to go in, but before we do this, I have to say, Elliott, you have a fan who says you have a beautiful voice. So I just wanted to make sure that you heard that. And you do. So I want to go into The Giver, which was both of your first time to work together. And The Giver was that was the last show we did before quarantine. And they did it in a very interesting way where a few of the younger roles were double cast. But not just double cast as in like you got a night off. No. You flip-flopped and played the other role. And that was not necessarily a small role. So that was a lot. So I want to hear about your process, Elliott, for preparing two different roles in the same show. One of which is the lead, you're on stage the entire time. And then the other's the best friend. Talk to me about that.
Well, honestly, it wasn't too hard flipping from person to person. It's like Jonas took a lot of work to play, though, because, there was all the emotion. There was learning to be more fluent with the character. There was becoming the character in general. But Asher was just like me, but with a different name and a little more playful.
Great.
So really, there wasn't... Asher's kind of like the fourth grader, like the class clown in fourth grade. He's like that one guy, so that's kind of just what I took on for that role. So that wasn't too hard, and it kind of was just like myself, so I didn't really have to do much. The lines were easy to memorize too, but definitely it was a lot to handle and juggle around. It was just... It was kind of funny. I do remember, though, there was one night where Harold said,
Harold's the director, yeah.
The first rehearsal, Harold said that that he would have Jack Heath, who was Jonas slash Asher #2, play the role full time. And I was like super bummed out because when I got the part, I had heard that I would be half and half. And I think the reason he said that was because I was doing another production at the time, and that production wasn't over yet. We were still doing shows, still doing rehearsals. But the next like couple of weeks, I came in the entirety of Act 1 I had memorized, and that one night, he sat there in his chair, he was giving us notes, and he was saying, I think I'm going to have them switch off half and half. And I had no reaction to that on the outside, but my toes curled up in my shoes, and I was just like,
So that what people don't know, and hopefully people watching saw The Giver, was that during the beginning of rehearsals for that, Elliott was in another show that was going on.
So with a large role, wasn't it The Wizard of Oz?
No, that was
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland, okay.
So he was doing that, and he was missing rehearsals, which, lucky for Elliott, his dad was in the show. So I would, at the end of the night, I'd write down my notes, and I would write down Elliott's notes the best I could. I can't take credit for any of the work he did. But so when he did start coming in full time, well, he had Act 1 completely memorized. And I don't think any of us in the cast had Act 1 completely memorized. So, yeah, he definitely was letting us know he was ready to work. But he was in 3 shows back to back to back, all ending with The Giver.
Right.
So no one on that stage could say they was working harder than Elliott. And again, he downplays the fact that he's playing 2 separate roles, completely opposite characters with completely different mindsets, and neither one of them easy in my opinion. And having to flip week after week, and both kids, Jack and Elliott, did an amazing job. And again, you put it on these kids' shoulders and they can do it. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'd like to say I would do just as well, but I don't think I can handle 2 characters like that.
I mean, it's a lot. This was no easy task. It really is no easy task look, to be honest, especially the role of Jonas, just for any actor, that role is so layered and so emotional. We even have one of your fans said, oh my gosh, Elliott, in that last scene, he blew me away. And I felt the same way. And, and I know Jack's not on this call. We'll talk with him another time, but he also, both of you were so well together when you were playing, flip-flopped. It was a really great friendship. It was so natural and honest. And both of you really had your own takes on that role, and to go into that place, just alone, that is a challenge. And you did that. You took that journey so well, and then threw on this other role on top of that, which comes with its own challenges and traps. I just was really super impressed by that. It was really great.
What made me get the emotion too was thinking about what Jonas had to go through, is the fact everything seemed normal at first, and then he realized everything he had ever known wasn't real.
Right.
He didn't really, his friends weren't really really feeling emotion. His parents didn't really love him, and apparently love isn't a word, so
yeah.
They have to use words like or enjoy or something like that. So that's actually pretty hard. And I sort of take that into real life and think well, if nothing's real, where to go next? There's really nowhere to go, because there's not much. There's one other person who feels emotion beside you, and that's it. There's no one else, not even your parents, not your sister, not your friends, not... Exactly. Well, parents.
My biggest regret in doing this show, my only regret in doing this show, is that I never got to see that final scene.
Right.
I could hear him But I never got to see it, and it gets me like choked up to think about that scene, and I've never even seen it. But that to me was how do I put it without saying, not proof, because proof sounds like I didn't think he was able, but for him to come from where he was, which I thought was great. He was amazing in Pippin. He was amazing in a lot of his other shows. But to take that journey as Jonas successfully, night after night, and I think getting better every time he did it was incredible. Yeah. Like it just like I'm getting choked up. It's embarrassing. Yeah. But yeah, it was awesome to listen to because I didn't get to see it. But yeah, that for me was like solidified the fact that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Melody writes on there, what a deep thinker. And I was thinking the same thing. You really approached both of these roles as like, I mean, you know, I went to a theater conservatory. We talked about this last week. I got my BFA in theater. I mean, these are things that you are learned. That's the basis of the craft. And here you are, how old are you? 11, 12, 13, 18? 11, and you are, you know, you're talking about this in such a deep way. I mean, you really understood the part about merging yourself with your characters, going through, empathizing, thinking about if I put myself in this situation, how would I feel? What would I do? I mean, that's great. And then your analysis of the character, just spot on. This is what we're talking about. Children know, listen to them and learn.
Give them the credit they deserve. Yes. It was such an odd thing for me as a parent and a fellow actor. And he and I would have conversations about character and the idea of, we always talked about, don't act like Jonas, be Jonas. You know, we don't want to act like the character when we're kids and we're the lion in the play or whatever, like I said before, you know, that do a lion, growl like a lion, walk like a lion. This is that next step where you don't want to act like, you want to be that person. And we would do that, like, you know, before we would go on. Do you remember what we would say?
We would say, don't act like, be this person.
Right, tell the story. Go out there, tell the story, let everybody know his life, live his life on stage. It was cool to see him make those jumps. Was, as a father, was amazing. As a fellow actor, was rewarding because now I've got this actor that I can really work off of. So that's a little selfish. I'm like, you know, this kid he's giving me some meat. You know, as a dad, I'm super proud, and a little worried. You know, if you're familiar with the story, it's heavy. It's really heavy, and the idea that you're giving this kid experiences that a normal 11-year-old is God hope he doesn't ever have to experience those in real life. War and famine and death and murder and all these things. And he doesn't just have to take those things in gradually. I mean, he's on stage and you know, given the fact that we have to do that in front of an audience in a given time, it has to happen to him right in front of our eyes. There's a particular scene where he gets everything and he's got to break down. And then he has to come back to the dinner table with just a light change and act like everything's okay. And again, as an actor, I'm waiting for my scene to start. But as a father, I'm watching my kid fall apart. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then I have to act like everything's normal. That was hard for me. Which
also is even more challenging because, and I wanted to touch on this too, the father-son relationship in this show, because it's not a normal father-son relationship. Because normally we'd say, you're watching that, use it. Except this dad doesn't feel emotion. This dad's not going to be able to watch his son break down and then know what's going on with him, you know? So what was that like? I mean, you guys clearly are very close and have a close relationship. What was it like going into this father-son relationship that's so different from yours? And then what were the similarities?
I didn't let him live in the house throughout the whole production so that, you know, he wouldn't get too attached. So he was living in the backyard.
Yeah, method. That's tried to eat my finger off at one point. Yeah. It was like green for 3 days.
I said use it, you know.
Use it. Yeah.
That's what I used for the leg breaking. It was super painful. I was just sleeping so calmly in the backyard, and a goat just goes, nope, and nips at my finger.
Use it. It's all experience.
Method. It's method.
It is interesting because the parents are so apathetic and unnurturing. And again, we're sitting there in real life hearing these things and having these things happen, but we're oblivious to it. So your paternal instincts, your kids in distress, you want to console them. Right. Obviously, for the show, we're two different people, and if you're doing it successfully, I'm Father and he's Jonas. So that our real relationship kind of goes to the side. And I think we did that well. But, and having the discussions to get to those points and, to tell him that the dad doesn't care about those things or that's not their concern. And, it's opposite of what we do, or, again, to explore, for him to explore Jonas's feelings and emotions and sorrows and worries. And he's kind of got to do it on his own, and that's important. Again, going back to kids and the respect that they deserve. It's funny, I haven't been doing this that long, but I have some very set ideals on acting and actors. And one thing is that as an actor, you don't tell another actor what to do. It's not your job to direct them. Even if they're asking your advice, you tread lightly because it's not our job. And I hold that sacred. And at the same time, I'm working with a bunch of kids, but you have to give them the respect that they deserve. On stage, they're fellow actors. They're not fellow kid actors. Right. They're not children. They're just as important, and in his case more so, he's the lead, than we are. And so, as a dad, you're kind of like, well, you want to do this and do that. But as an actor on stage with him, you've got to be careful. I don't want to disrespect his way, especially right. At this age when he's developing it. So, I mean, we would have conversations, but it was difficult. It's difficult as I think for his mother and I both to kind of help him along, but also let him do his thing. And there was, I mean, for me, there's a specific moment where he got it. And it was his own thing and his own, and like, again, as a dad, I was like, yes. But as a father, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is deep stuff. We're going to have some conversations, but, so I lost my train of thought, but I think I got my
No, you got it. I think it's great.
Sorry.
No, please.
One night I was bawling and I was just like building up all of this emotion, and I came down to the table, and it's supposed to be like kind of a secretive insult when I say like, that's for sure, something like that. Mm-hmm. But like that night I was just kind of so mad and scared at the same time. I was just like, that's no. And I like kind of screamed it, and a tear rolled down my face, and I'm like, oh no!
That's the cool thing about live theater. And that leads me into my next topic. But before I go there, I just wanted to say, I think talking about the giver and your relationships and the journey that the characters go through and the suppressing of the emotion, there starts to be a break when Jonas starts to get the memories. And you guys added a whole other layer, I think, in your connection and then in your depth to tell the story and find the truth, that it was really great to see the struggle. So I just wanted to applaud that. But you're telling this great story about how you're emotional and you're affected and something comes out that you're like, oh, this is what's supposed to be happening. And that's what I love about live theater, because everything is that one experience. You guys, the audience, even if you're doing the show the next day, that day will never be repeated. And I love that. What are some things, I know both of you do film as well. So what are some things, why do you love theater? Why do you stay with theater? Or are you like, no, I'm done. Like, this quarantine got me out of it. Thank goodness I'm only doing film.
I'm not doing anything because of the fact that there's not much to audition for me. For some reason, I'm just like, I auditioned for these 2 things, and that was it. And I haven't been able to audition for anything else, so I'm just kind of.
Well, the question is, do you want to do that and you don't want to do theater anymore?
No, I still do want to do theater. I also still do want to maybe play guitar or something, or learn a bunch of new things about theater and take this time to just create something, or that has to do with theater.
What do you love about theater that keeps you coming back?
Just everything about it. The fact that you're performing in front of an audience and maybe inspiring a bunch of people, or lightening people's days, or just having fun up there with a bunch of new friends. And every cast is different. Even if it's like some of the same people, every cast will react differently to each other.
Right.
So I think that's super cool.
So
yeah, I agree. I think you definitely, when it comes to the people, the bond that you make with your castmates, it is special. Everyone's special. Even maybe more so the hard ones. Maybe a show that you look back and you're like, oh, that show wasn't very good. But because of that, maybe the bond is even stronger. And then you have a great show, and of course, you had a great show together. I love that. I like the idea. I think I love the idea of acting, and I like the fact that there's these different genres. But being on stage, walking that tightrope, between disaster and success, that's an amazing feeling just right then and there. But again, like for me, I always try to think about the idea of bringing something to life, a written word to life, someone's idea to life, especially when you're going through the rehearsal process, and you find those moments, especially when you're struggling, and you find those moments, and it becomes real. And then, like Elliott did, you can tie that into something in your life, and you build on that. And what I find is and I think we talked about that, is if you have a life experience that you can kind of tie into what's going on in the show, then you can use your own experience to have that emotion or have that reaction. And then from then on, that's in your bag of tricks you put in your pocket. You can pull it out later. And I think you grow so much more exponentially in theater, and the dynamics of regular theater to musicals is so different and so challenging. And I again, speaking as a father watching my son, he comes to life when he's on stage. Yeah. What that actually is in his head, but I can see it. His mother and I can see it. It's literally like a light switch. And when you talked about his experiences with Kentwood, people knew Elliott well before he auditioned for Pippin. He had come to some of my rehearsals. He was there at our town. He was there at the cast parties. And I remember on our opening night, he told his mom and I, I'm going to go mingle. And so this is 2 years ago. So he was, 9 years old? And he went around on his own to, the cast members and their families, and had conversations. And if anybody out there has ever had a conversation with my child, it's not necessarily having a conversation with a 9-year-old. Yeah. We always say that he found his people. When he started doing the troupe and acting, he found his people, and he was home. And that's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That one rehearsal, I fell asleep, and Fiona wanted to steal me.
Yeah, he's had a couple of people from Kentwood want to steal him and take him home.
I'm sure pretty much everyone has probably.
We have a list.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's your own fault. So I have to say, I was one of those people that was super impressed, like having this total grown up conversation. Right from the get go, I was like, this kid, my gosh. And I have to say, I think, I'll never stop saying this. I think there's a magic and a power in theater that is just really unexplainable. And there's something about the energy, that the communion that happens between actors and then with the audience that is just, they're another character on the show, really. And they just, their energy feeds so much into, it doesn't necessarily change what we're doing because that's not the story, but it feeds into how we're doing it and the energy. And there's just the bond. There's just something magical about going through a journey with the same people over and over again that I feel like it's a different kind of bond when we go into the film and television world.
Yeah.
Which I also love, but there's a power and magic in theater that is undeniable, I think. I love it. Yeah. That's so great. So speaking of, what is your favorite experience that you've had so far in the theater? Either a moment or a show or, and it can be either on stage or off.
Well, I have a lot. I'm going to say one of my favorite show definitely was either Pippin or The Giver. Both of them were really, really fun. I bonded with a lot of people, and I had a really good time doing both. Yeah. But one of my favorite moments at Kentwood was when I did Pippin, and on stage, Pippin and Catherine were just talking, and then Catherine says, "We've got a surprise!" And I'm supposed to come on and say, "We've got a surprise!" And then we say it back and forth for a couple of seconds, and then I reveal the flute. But what was hilarious was one night I was talking about how I scraped my knee on a stair when I turned away and walked off stage. And I hear the end of the song and I'm like, oh shoot, gotta get down the stairs. And then I hear, we've got a surprise. And then I realized I forgot the flute. So I'm just left with the decision, go out the door, grab the flute, and then go out the door, or just go out the door. And then I just go out, and it's been like 20 seconds, and I run on stage, and I'm like, we got a surprise! So that was funny. And then I had to do this whole thing where I'm like, oh, and then I go run off stage, grab the flute, run back on stage, and I'm like,
I remember watching from the other wing waiting for my entrance, and when you came on, to be honest, I did not even realize you didn't have the flute, and then when you came up with the idea, I was like, is that new? Did we, it was so, it didn't seem wrong. It was so flawless and great thinking. And look, that happens. We have so many stories of things going on either unintentionally or, obviously all unintentionally, but where you never know, things break, wigs fly off into the audience. But that's what makes it fun is having that quick, when your actress says the wrong line that makes you not be able to say your next line properly. Also Pippin's story in that same scene.
It's funny now that he says that because it is funny and he laughs about it. But when it happened, it wasn't so funny.
No, it was not funny.
It was devastating.
Remember. You were really
upset. There was a lesson in there, and I don't think he's ever been late for an entrance since.
Well, there was that one time when I dropped the soap in the mirror.
Tell that story. That's
so there was this big ordeal where I dropped the soap.
So hold on. In the other show, the nerd that he's in, he has to exit and he has the soap on a rope. And it's around his wrist. So just so they know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was on my wrist, but that night specifically, it was really loose. I have two stories about the soap actually.
They don't.
I had the soap hanging, and I opened the door, and I try to keep the soap as close to my hand as possible, so that way, when I get scared, the soap will swing around my arm, because it looks like so much shock, and it just swings around. So I open the door, and when I open it, the soap just goes whoop, and slides off my hand and bounces down the stairs.
Oh no!
And one of the characters named Rick is supposed to come out the door wearing a costume, and I still have to go. I can't pick up the soap or anything. So I run backstage, and apparently on stage, he looks down, sees the soap, grabs it, and puts it on a tray. And that's the whole thing. That was it. But I run over back to the people who were running like the sound and stuff, or who were like moving all the props, and I say, be sure to remember the soap that I dropped on the stairs. And Dan, who's also from Kentwood, and Willem were talking at that moment. And I was late for that cue, but they just went so fluently with that, and I ran in, and I was like, because I was talking to the people backstage. It took like half an hour, and then I realized, oh no, I have a cue here. So I just ran over to the door, and I didn't want to open it, but I was like, just go on stage. All because of
that is live theater. You never know when a prop is going to malfunction. And that's why you're now taking improv classes. So you know exactly what to do.
There was another time with the soap where he runs out and it's on his wrist and he's got to slam the door. Well, the soap got stuck in the door.
Oh, no.
And it's such a classic moment because, you know, his mother and I were in the audience every night watching. And you just see this soap going back and forth. And then he has to slowly open the door and pull the soap out.
I love it.
Just laying on the floor the rest of the show.
I love it. Shawn, do you have a favorite theater moment?
Of my own?
Yeah, either a show or a moment or something.
Well, I think for me too, my most favorite memory to date is the very first time I stepped on stage for an audience at Kentwood, and that was magical for me because I felt like I was waiting forever to do it, especially after all these years of not. That was incredible. I had so many fun times. We had a scene in our town, same kind of thing where my co-star Steven, he flipped his lines. And you know how you hear it in your head. I'm trying not to anticipate the line, but you hear the line, you know what to say. And he says the line, and it's not the line, and there's this pause, and I'm like, and you're trying to call up that line, and I had to basically back the scene up because I couldn't jump. That's what it was. So we kind of just played the scene back again, a little bit of the scene, and then it was fine, but that was a scary moment. One of my best debacles was in Sunday in the Park with George. It's funny because now I can't think of the word. So what's the word? So there's this word in Sunday in the Park with George that I kept forgetting. And so it's so something for a sculpture. And I can't think of the word right now. So the first night that I forget it, I said, and it's to music. You know, you don't have time to sit there and try to improv it out. I'm like, it's so. And Bouquet, the girl I was with, she just looks at me and she just gave me this look. She's just like, and she says the word, and I'm like, yes, and the way you go about. So I started to write it on my hand every night because it freaked me out. I never had really forgotten a line before that, and so as the production ran, I would write less and less of the word, you know, and then I conquered it. I didn't need to write it anymore. And I never looked at it.
God.
Just the idea that it was there. But that was, I hope a lot of people have had that experience when the word's gone. It's just gone. It flew away. And you have no idea where it went or what it is. And there's no word that'll replace it for whatever reason. That was terrifying, but yeah, now it's funny.
That is a terrifying feeling.
Unconventional. That's the word.
Unconventional. I hate that feeling, but I will say, and to kind of what Elliott was talking about earlier, and you talked about this too, about telling the story. The thing that always gets me out of that, and now I don't have anxiety from that, is if I know the story and I know what I want in the scene, I'll say whatever I need to do. Right. But that is the worst feeling, is knowing, is forgetting that thing and knowing, oh, what is it? Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think, like, wow, I'm thinking of all the crazy things that have happened and like being like somebody missing their cue, being left on stage, costume malfunctions, like all these crazy things. But yeah, that's the scariest.
Yeah. I'd rather have my pants fall off than forget a line.
Yeah, 100%.
What would have been hilarious is if you forgot the word, or like someone forgot the word in that show, and they didn't know what to say, so they said, "So inconceivable."
That's right.
So real quickly, give us a little rundown of anything that you are working on, we're working on right before quarantine, hope to work on when quarantine is over.
Sing a name? Well, tell them about it. You were working on that, and then quarantine happened.
We were working on it, and then quarantine happened, and I said I would read the script and memorize it, and I haven't gotten around to doing it, so I'm going to try and do that.
So Elliott was cast as?
I almost said one. I was cast as Cosmo.
In Singing in the Rain.
So, awesome.
And that was his final production at his grammar school.
Oh, man.
So they didn't get a chance to perform it, but they did a really awesome video on YouTube. And if you look up Singin' South Shores on YouTube, you can see it. And his classmates and Elliott got to do a kind of music video of it, which is really cute. So they got to do something, but they didn't get to perform it, which is sad.
Yeah.
We both auditioned for Fun Home. It was the very last thing we did before quarantine happened. And Elliott he's doing improv, and he has auditioned for a few things, and he also hosts a Friday Night Terrors Zoom meeting where he reads scary stories to his friends, which is awesome. And if you're interested, I would totally log in. I listen to it every Friday. He's such a great storyteller and so animated when he reads. It's really a gift, and he even lets you tell a story if you've got a good one. That's really fun. He's been keeping busy that way.
You know, there's always this one dude with a really weird name that has nothing to do with the meeting, and he tells like really good stories. I have no idea who that is. It's just a random person. His name is like Banana Peel or something. He'll just tell really good stories.
At least he has good stories.
He'll tell really good stories.
At least he's got good stories.
Some random guy.
Well, let me know how to log on, and I'll let people know if anyone's interested in hear Friday Night Terrors.
So that's pretty fun, and I've been auditioning for lots of stuff via Zoom, as everybody else is.
Yeah.
I did my first commercial that no one will ever see. That was an interesting commercial, but it was for it's overseas, and it's a website. But I got paid, so that was awesome. It was nice to receive some money, thousands of dollars.
Of course.
Or dollar. Dollar. And I got cast in a short film that is supposed to shoot next month, but we'll see what happens with all this. Who knows? And we're looking for things for him. So I think both of us, through all this, like every other actor out there, there's not much we can do, but we're still pursuing it. And I can't wait to get back on stage.
Me too.
Can I tell you something that was really disappointing?
She's right there.
Tell us.
There's this show I auditioned for. Music Man. You might have heard of it, It was in this
little ditty.
place called Broadway. Might have heard of it as well. And
vaguely, it rings a bell, kind of.
I think it's pronounced Broadway.
Broadway, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Broadway, yeah. Near New Jersey.
Didn't know that. Thank you.
Tell your story.
So, I auditioned for it, and I got a call back, and I was super excited, and it was so much fun auditioning for it. We'll never know who got the part because we've never heard.
Quarantine.
When quarantine's over, you never know. Maybe you'll get a phone call.
Maybe.
That's super exciting, though, Elliott. Really, that is like getting a callback is huge. That is awesome. Congrats to you.
I would like to be able to brag about getting a callback for a Broadway show.
Yes.
If I just got that far, I'd be excited.
That's very exciting. Yes. Congrats. That's awesome.
Well, and that leads me into my plan for the future, and it's to ride his coattail.
Yeah, that was my plan as well. So I hope there's
Yeah.
room on those coattails for me as well. That's my.
I just need good parts. I can sit in a
planning.
cafe and sip coffee.
Totally.
I can drive by in a taxi.
Yeah.
I'm ready for that.
I just need like 1 or 2 lines. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for a lot, Elliott.
Yeah, so
Plan
remember.
the coffee, the house, and the drive.
I wanna give a quick shout out before we log off to the mom of the family, Miss Gloria Plunkett. And I know she's not going to come on the screen, but I do want to give a shout out because she is so supportive and is always helping out and is a brilliant photographer. I was flipping through, she's making my job so easy because I'm flipping through show photos for our posts on Kentwood, and they are just beautiful. And I just wanted to give a shout out because I think there's a lot of, as actors, we get all the applause at the end of the show, but there's a lot more work that goes into it. And Shawn, you also do a lot of the backstage work too. You helped us out a ton on Pippin, building and designing some magical things and helping out on that. You're very handy. And and very talented. I mean, you really are. And so I think that we have a lot of unsung heroes that help to put on shows that we couldn't do without. And
especially at this level.
Yes, especially.
Without all the people that help out, I mean, what would the show be? I know for us, absolutely, we have to thank Gloria and his mom because, I mean, from rides for this kid to the theater to a scene partner to literally someone helping putting costumes together to feeding us backstage, all the way to shooting and filming. I don't know how many productions she did at Kentwood so far, but she shot, I think, almost all of them since our town, right? And again, helping out. You try to live with 2 actors. I don't think I have to say much more.
I do. Yeah, I do. It's No more said. But she is fantastic. She is super great. And the thing is that it really does take a village to put on these shows. You're absolutely right. And we've had, people volunteer for all kinds of things before and, and do great work. And it's just, when it falls all on one shoulder, people get burnt out and they get tired. And one of the things that we love about the theater and the community is that we all come together. That's that bonding thing we talked about earlier. And I just think it's such a gift and it's so important. So thanks, Gloria.
Thanks, Gloria. Maybe someday you'll see her.
Yeah. Well, I get to see her. You guys, thank you so much for sitting down with me and sharing all your stories and your thoughts, and you guys are just the best.
Thanks for having us on here.
Yes.
It was fun.
And we'll have to have you come back when we do our special Nerf Battle Edition.
Absolutely. We're there.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. A little known fact. We are quite the experts in the Nerf wars.
We're deadly.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can see that.
I
Those are the kids with their Nerf guns.
Oh, I love it. That's right. We're professional. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a
You're
good night.
awesome.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you on Sunday for Director Designer Edition. 7 o'clock. Same Zoom channel. All right. Talk to you guys later.